Hey guys, gals, welcome back to The Thinking Shooter. This video, we're going to talk about the Atibal Apex 4-14. Welcome back to Thinking Shooter. I'm Levi. Thank you so much for joining us. So, before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn the notifications on, share this, all that good stuff, right? Shout out to my good buddy Richard White for correctly guessing that yes, in the last video, I was drinking an old fashioned, which leads us to tonight's drink of the evening. Anyone, if you can guess what it is and more specifically what type. Let's see if we can do that. Probably not, but so yeah. Before we get going, I was able to spend some time out in Conroe, Texas here a couple weeks ago, and while I was out there, I went out and hung out at Big Tex Ordnance. So if you need gun stuff, go ahead, hit them up, check them out. They're not sponsoring this video. If you guys happen to watch this and see it, maybe, consider sponsoring. That'd be super cool. But while I was there, I got a t-shirt that I'd like to give away. It's been washed, but here's the front and here's the back. So if you would like to make this awesome Big Tex Ordnance t-shirt yours, there's some rules. First is you must be subscribed to the channel. You must like and comment on this video as well as the next 4 scope testing videos. I will give a reminder in the next 4 videos as they come out. So the way it's going to work is after all the videos are up, once the 5th video is posted, 1 week from when I post it, I will go through and pick a winner at random. Then I will do probably like a short little video, make an announcement. Hey, this individual won, and congratulations, whatnot. And then we'll get in touch and whatnot, get your info, and I will send the shirt out to you, all on me. Yeah. So if you'd like to win it, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, all that good stuff. So before we get too far into this, I want to do a quick touch on some things that I left out when I was talking about the process. So what I did was, for all the scopes that I tested, once they were done, I did a write-up where I wrote like a 10 to 15 page dissertation on what I did for testing, what I came out with, what I liked, didn't like, recommendation, all that good stuff, along with some pictures and whatnot. And I sent that to each respective company that the scopes I was testing came from. I did this because I wanted to give the companies that I was reviewing a scope for an opportunity to see the results before I went public with them. I find it's only fair that they sent me the scope. They should be able to know first. I'm not going to sugarcoat, and I'm certainly not going to change what I said to them here. It is what it is. I like stuff. I didn't like stuff. I'm letting them know regardless. But I wanted to make sure that was known out there. So if a video is out, I've already contacted the company. They've already read the write-up. They already know what it says and know what to expect. So moving forward with this. The optic we're talking about tonight is the Atibal Apex 4-14 by 44mm first focal plane. Thank you so much, guys, out at Atibal Optics for sending this out for review. I know it took a little bit. Apologize for that, but it is finally here, and it's gonna be fun talking about this thing. So this thing does MSRP for $499. I did a first impressions where I did basically an unboxing for all of the scopes that I did on the Instagram page for The Thinking Shooter. If you're interested in that, head over there. I'm just going to do a quick synopsis of the unboxing and then get into the meat and potatoes of it. So packaging was adequate, had a lot of foam padding on it. It included the scope, obviously, the sunshade, lens cloth, Allen key, throw lever, 3 different sizes, by the way, bikini lens cover, manual. The appearance, lightweight, but it doesn't feel cheap. It feels pretty good. Nice, even matte black finish, or matte black anodizing, excuse me. Kind of an average design, nothing spectacular about it. The one thing that did kind of throw me off was the cuts on the bell. I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Still not. I do like the throw levers, and I even commented that I really wish more companies, especially the big boys, would get on the same page of including that, because if you're going to make a scope cost $4,000, holy hell, it needs to have a little knob to make it easier to run your magnification. Turrets, a little bit of slop, seemed responsive. The clicks were positive. They had audible and tactile movements to them. It has push-pull locking. There's not a zero stop, and it does not have elevation graduations, or as they're commonly called, come-up lines. The ocular adjustment, parallax and diopter, they're both smooth, no issues. They seemed responsive, easy to adjust. When you get these two running in tandem and set up correctly, the reticle was not quite as crisp as I would like it to have been, but, you know. The magnification ring, smooth, no binding, no skipping, no clunking. The image, whenever you adjust the magnification and you're looking through the optic, the image is gradual. It doesn't like do this and then jump or whatever. So there's no jumping or abnormal movements. The glass, initially I said the glass was probably the best feature of this entire optic. It's clean, clear, didn't notice any hewing or hazing, no distortion, just small amount of chromatic aberration. The reticle, I like that it had a plus sign crosshair. There was a few things about the reticle that I didn't really care for, like the upper stadia having every mil hash numbered. I wish it would have like stopped at 5, or at least, you know, done even numbering or something. I would rather have the windage be, you know, 10 mils instead of 5. I don't really care for the half mil tree reticle design. I'd rather it be a full tree instead of a half. Other than that, I don't dislike the reticle. It's just there's a few things that I would improve or change and clean up. Side notes. So because it is a 30mm tube with a 44mm objective, it is going to have decreased light transmission, meaning it's not going to be as bright in your optic, or especially whenever you get into low light situations, it can make it to where it's a little more difficult to make out what you're looking at because you're not getting as much light in to actually observe the area. Because it is a 44mm objective, I'm pretty sure the intent behind this was to put it on like flat top style rifles like the AR, I think. Don't know, I haven't confirmed that with Atibal. That helps it have a lower height over bore. But aside from that, the sunshade, yeah, there's no wobble, no excessive gap. Pretty good setup. Before I went into firing, so there was a few things that I had concerns on, and that was, as I already said, the turret play, the reticle only being, you know, a half tree design, and the biggest one being the lack of elevation graduations, because to me, that's a huge thing, especially if you're not going to have a zero stop, because you need to be able to find where you're at and get back to your zero, at least somewhat quickly. So when I got to firing, I went to zero, had some issues. The reticle wasn't wanting to respond to the corrections that I gave it. I would shoot and then try to make a correction, and I'd be like 1 mil right, and I'd move it 1 mil left, and I'd be like 2 mil left. And I was like, what is going on here? So I'd make another correction, still wasn't working. After around like 10 to 12 shots or so, it finally started to settle in and start responding. So that is common on some optics, where you have to shoot it and it will settle in due to the recoil, and then it will start responding. I wish they didn't do that, but sometimes they do. And then when I would slip the scale, I noticed that the zero didn't line up center. It would sit just left or just right of center. Didn't care for that, because that makes it to where now that's something else I have to think about instead of just being able to look at the number and go. Now I have to remember, is it lined up right or left? And then after that, I did a test to make sure the reticle subtended correctly, just making sure all the stuff inside the scope measured out to what it says it is. And then I did a tracking test. To do this, I did a box test. I fired 6 groups, 5 shots per group, 30 shots total. I fired 1 group at the center, then I dialed, and all of these I held center while shooting. So if I made the correction, I still held center. But I shot a group at center, and then I dialed up and right 1 mil, fired another group, then I dialed back to 0, then dialed up and left, fired another group, then back to 0, then down and left 1 mil, fired another group, then back to 0, then down and right 1 mil, then fired another group, and then back to 0, and I fired my final group to make sure it was following around. So some things that I found was the tracking seemed responsive. It seemed to follow it. I found that I didn't really care, again, for the turret not lining up, because I got lost a couple times and forgot that I had to actually count instead of just look at the number and move it. I was being lazy. So I noticed, especially in my last group, that it did push it a little bit because I was not back to center-ish. So the other thing that didn't help was the groups weren't as tight as I was hoping. Or not necessarily hoping, but preferred. They were only shooting about a 1.5 MOA group. So it was very windy out that day. And the ammo that I was using was basically M855. So for those of you that don't know what it is, it's 62 grain 5.56 round. And it's only expected to hold like a 2 MOA group. So it was doing what it was supposed to. I just don't prefer that. And I should have used something different. So after I finished shooting, I kind of had some post-fire thoughts. Was like, okay, I need to have a different rifle and ammo. You know, a semi-auto platform with burner ammo is not what I need to be doing to test precision optics. So I decided I need something that shoots 1 MOA or better. Something that's not going to be affected by wind. I decided, well, let me look. I would like to use either 6.5 Creedmoor, or it could go with trusty old 308. And this was right in the middle of like all the COVID ammo pandemic. Couldn't find anything on the shelves. And 6.5 Creedmoor was nowhere to be found, but I could still occasionally find 308. So I decided that's what I'm going to use. So I ended up getting another rifle, set it up specifically for testing optics, and ended up deciding I'm going to repeat all the tests that I did initially and start over, because it's not fair to the companies or the optics that I'm testing to use crappy ammo and be like, oh yeah, your scope sucks, when it's really the ammo or the gun or whatever other factors. So I repeated all the tests. Had much better results. I shot a sub to 1 MOA group for everything. No issues there. The turn alignment issue was still present. I still had to be cognizant and think about that, because there's a couple times I almost got off and I was like, I need to remember that. I have to take that into account when I'm making my corrections. So I did determine that the ammo selection and the wind were the issue, or part of the issue anyway. And then after that, I decided I wanted to shoot at some distance between 100 and 800 yards. Didn't really have any particular order. I was just kind of plinking at this point. Had some ammo left to burn and just wanted to try it and see what it did. Everything was going good. I hit about 500 yards before things started to get a little blurry, and I realized maybe the glass on it isn't quite as good as I originally thought. So with the magnification all the way up, it started to lose a little bit. It started to get kind of grainy. And then but I was able to get it out to 800. The tracking was responsive enough that I was able to actually get on and repeatedly hit at 800 yards. But it just, it's a $500 scope. So moving on from there, I got into the torture testing. This is where I did all the drop test and all that other stuff, right? So during this, I was, my focus was to test the optic durability and really test the scope's limits. With that being said, the objective was not to break the scope. It was just to see what it will do with tests that I thought were reasonable. So when we got to the torture test, basically it was again, if you aren't familiar with the procedure that I did, go back, watch the breakdown of the scope testing, and that will go into further detail. So again, just a refresher. I did the baseline tracking, then I did a series of 3 drop tests with a tracking test in between each drop. I did 2 water tests, one running, one full submerge, both for 1 minute each. Tracking test after each water test, and then I did a heat test followed by a tracking test, and a cold test followed by a tracking test. So this is where we get into the actual torture of it, right? So the first drop, I dropped it directly onto the elevation turret. There was no shift in zero. It didn't affect the tracking. It still responded. Because I tested the baseline tracking. It tracked fine. It actually did really good. I think it just needed to settle in initially. But I did the first drop and dropped it right on the elevation turret. No shift in zero. Didn't affect tracking at all. So I was like, awesome. Go back. Did the windage. No shift in zero, and it didn't affect tracking. And then I did the final one and dropped it right on the parallax. And again, there was no shift in zero, no effect on tracking. It was this thing turned out to be a little beast. It really held up really well. Then I got to the water test, ran it under, running water for a minute, no effect on tracking, no shift in zero, and there was no water in the tube. Same thing for the submerge. For a minute, pulled it out. There was no water in the tube, no effect on zero or tracking ability. It held up really good to that. The heat test, same thing. Put it in the oven, pulled it out. There was no effect on it. Nothing was tight or locked up. It had no zero shift. It only took, because of its lightweight construction and everything, it only took like a minute and a half for this thing to cool down to a point that I could actually just handle it completely with bare hands. Cold test. Again, no noticeable effect on tracking, no zero shift. The magnification was a little stiff. It was pretty like, oh goodness, I'm glad I had the throw lever on. But after about a minute, it ran perfectly fine. It smoothed right back out. There was the slightest bit of fog on the front lens. It was a little haze, but I could still see clear enough through it that I would shoot. I wouldn't have any issues shooting it. The fog on the front lens was gone in about 2 minutes, like completely gone in about 2 minutes. So finishing up, my final thoughts on this thing are, it has its flaws. The reticle or the glass turned out to be a little grainy. The turn alignment is kind of an annoyance. The reticle isn't my preferred or favored thing. And the elevation graduation, that is a big one that I really, and I told the company too, I was like, hey, guys, that to me is a huge no-go. But other than that, if you're willing to overlook all that stuff, this thing actually handled itself very well. I was very surprised. Out of all of them, honestly, I expected this one to have some pretty bad issues. But with all that being said, I think it's a decent starter scope for getting into long range shooting. I would definitely recommend that you upgrade to something else later. But if you could find this for a little bit lower price, and I told them that I would like to see this thing sit probably closer to mid to low $400 instead of sitting right at $500. But as long as you can find it for, a reasonable price and you're aware of what to watch out for, I think it's a pretty decent scope to start out with in it. Again, there's some things I would like to see. Mainly, the biggest one is with the reticle. Here's a picture of the reticle for reference, so you guys can actually see what's going on when I'm talking about it. Here's another picture that actually shows kind of the layout and how everything looks and how to use the reticle and the spacing of everything and whatnot. But what I'm talking about right now is this portion in red on the upper stadia. I would rather, instead of it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, either be cut down to just 5, so it would look something like this, or if they wanted to keep the full top, just number it 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I would rather see something like that. And then the next portion is down here where the tree is at. I'm a firm either no tree or full tree. You know, so specifically, if you look right here in the red, I'm talking about this, how it's just down to 5, and then you've also got the 2 sets of 2s on either side. One is for windage, one is for elevation. Just so you know, I know what it's saying, but especially to newer shooters, they might get a little confused. But my ideal setup would be preferably something like this, where it has the full tree and just goes up to 5, and you can see it's only got 1 set of 2s. Or again, if they wanted to keep the full tree, something like this where it still has the full tree on it, but it goes up to 10 by evens, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's what I'm talking about. So anyway, after everything was said and done, like I said, I reached out, gave them the write-up. They read it, got back with me. They said I did a great job on the review. It was very detailed. I went above and beyond most reviewers, but they did want to make sure that it was annotated. They said that, like I had initially said, that I would like to see it closer to $400. That yes, it is MSRP'd for $500 on their site, but most of their retailers that sell the optic do sell this thing closer to that $400 mark. So if you can find it for that, I wouldn't hesitate to say maybe pick it up, give it a try to at least see if you like long range shooting and to learn the basics before you invest more into it. It's a good starter scope. And on top of that, they didn't tell me this, but I did want to add this in. They do have a lifetime warranty. If you look at their site, they tell you, hey, no BS, lifetime warranty. To us, when we say lifetime warranty, we mean lifetime warranty. If you have any issues or it breaks or anything, contact us and we'll get it fixed or replaced. So I do think that's pretty cool. I really respect that. These guys have been awesome to work with. Guys, again, thank you so much for sending this optic out for me to review. It's been awesome to do. So, in closing, guys, again, don't forget about the t-shirt giveaway. Again, you must be subscribed to the channel. Here it is. I'll do another, You must be subscribed to the channel. And you have to like and comment on this video and the next 4 scope review videos that are coming up. Again, after the 5th video is up, 1 week from then, I will pick a winner at random. Make sure you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button, notification bell, share, all that good stuff, right? In the comments, tell me what you thought about this, and also tell me what you would like to see in the future. If you would like to see a breakdown of the rifle that I ended up using and why I did what I did with the gun or the rifle and how it's set up, or, even the rifle that I was using previously, or talk about the ammo or environmentals, or even get into the scope lingo, or if you're confused on why, I call this the ocular end and this the objective end. If you'd like to learn some nomenclature on the optic, let me know that, guys. I know someone commented previously and said they wouldn't mind scope lingo. So yeah, also check us out on Instagram. I do have an Instagram. It's the Thinking Shooter on Instagram. Check us out. Follow us over there as well. Yeah, so if you guys missed it, I'll leave a clickable thing on here somewhere to check out the previous video talking about the process and how everything was done and why it was done and whatnot. Also, I'll leave the clickable thing on here for the playlist that all these scope videos will be in, so you can go through and watch all those. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe, like, all that good stuff, man. So guys, I hope you really enjoy this stuff. Again, leave a comment down below. As always, make it make sense.